The first one I want to talk about is The Haunting from 1963. Let me pull this up on the IMDb. So The Haunting is an adaptation of a book called The Haunting of Hill House, I believe, which you might have heard about because it gets adapted every once in a while. I think there was a recent Netflix series. But the very first adaptation was just called The Haunting. And it fucking rules. It is so good. It's from 1963. And I was like, this movie's so fucking good. I think like it's one of these movies where every second of it is a good movie. Does that make sense? There's no point where I'm like, geez, I wish they'd get on with it. It's just, it is such an incredible, like the script is so tight. The performances are so effective. The story has so many like layers and threads and like little allusions and allegories that are running through it. It's such a simple, it takes place in like essentially for the most part one location, like this one house. The horror editing is phenomenal. It always cuts at the right time. The amount of restraint, oh my god, you want to talk about the directing and the editing, the amount of restraint. Half of the horror stuff happens off camera, like you don't see it. And it's fucking great. I was never like super scared while watching this. I was never like, oh my god, I'm so terrified. But I absolutely felt like the emotion, you know? I felt the tension, and it's so enrapturing. So let's talk about it. So The Haunting is a movie from 1963. It follows basically four characters inside of this house. The house is almost a character in and of itself. The house is built on the hill. It's built on hill. It's called Hill House. It was designed. It was built like 90 years prior to the start of the story by this guy named Crane, and immediately this house is just fucking evil. It's just cursed. The Crane's wife dies just before she was about to like reach the premises of the house. Like the carriage they were on crashed into a tree and she died instantly of like a head injury or something like that. So he raises his daughter in this house and she stays there her entire life. She never leaves and she always sleeps in her nursery. She ends up dying because her caretaker is ignoring. She's like knocking on the wall for help to like with her cane, and the caretaker is downstairs fooling around with a guy, and the daughter dies at the age of like 90, right? Like she goes like her whole life. So now, I don't think she ever had kids, so the house has gone to some distant relative. And this relative is curious because the house has such a reputation for being haunted that she wants to... Oh, and I should mention, the caretaker basically she lived in the house for a little while longer. Oh, that's what it was. I think it went to her first. And then she like killed herself. She just suddenly hanged herself in the library with seemingly no explanation. So this house is it's just cursed. I think they say in the movie it was born bad. And so now this lady has inherited this house via like a kind of tenuous family connection. And she wants to find out if it's really haunted. So she enlists this guy, Dr. John Markway, who is like a paranormal investigator scientist dude. And he puts together a little research team of 3 other people, one of whom is the nephew of the lady who now has inherited the house, because he wants the house, right? And so he's curious about checking it out as well. So there's Markway, who's kind of like he's like the scientist exposition sort of guy. But he's such that guy. He does mostly exist for exposition, but he is written as the type of guy who just loves expositing, and that makes it kind of work really well. There's a young woman named Eleanor who is basically she's coming from this. She's basically running away from home. She's got this weird troubled home life. And you don't know too much about it until later in the film, but she's basically like steals her sister's car, her older sister's car, and runs away from home to join this investigation. She's basically got nowhere else that she can go. And then there is Theodora, who is also known as Theo, who is a vaguely psychic, like she can read people's minds. She's also like totally a lesbian. I was not expecting such strong lesbian undertones in the film, and I also was not expecting them to be like intentional. Apparently Theo was written very explicitly to be a lesbian and have some kind of attraction to Eleanor, but because of the Hays Code and all that at the time, and decency standards, they couldn't ever what is it? I think that they could never physically touch. So there's so many scenes of them all but cuddling or holding hands, but it's always there's a blanket between them or something like that, and it's so they're so lesbo. So they, it's pretty amusing. Cause okay. they have adjoining rooms, and they find out that they have rooms that connect to each other. And before the first night, cause they're told stuff gets crazy at night, Theodora, she's always staring Eleanor down, she's trying to make her flustered. And Theodora is if you get scared, just run to my room. And I was like, what the fuck? Don't play with this young lady's heart. You wicked woman. Also, because she can read minds, she uses that to it's so weird. A lot of the movie is just bullying this little, just bullying this young questioning woman. You feel so bad for Eleanor. She is the main character, really. There is actually a lot of as far as I can tell, direct adaptation of her narration from the book. So you get a lot of her perspective on internal perspective and thoughts, and it's kind of interesting. It's something that's definitely gone out of style. I can't think of the last movie I watched, recent movie from the last decade at least, that even had internal a narrating, a narrator. But I don't know, it works. It doesn't really feel old-fashioned. It just feels like that's what they're doing. And then Luke is kind of let's see. I would describe Luke, he's also a young man. I would describe him as an economics major. He kind of has that personality. He's in econ. He is also the most skeptical of the group. He doesn't believe in ghosts. He believes in, the natural scientific world. And he's also, the fact that he wants to inherit the house. And it's this nice big property. It's out in the New England countryside. It's kind of secluded. He basically doesn't want there to be ghosts because he doesn't want the property value to go down. So essentially, once the group is assembled, the rest of the movie is just shit happens at night, and it starts ramping up, and Eleanor finds herself becoming more and more engrossed and kind of captured by, at first she's terrified. She kind of believes that the presence in the house has some sort of fixation on her, that it either by random chance or something, because she is the first person that technically talks back to the ghost. There's this great scene of her and Theo huddling in Theo's bed in a very straight way, of course. Well, there's just this like banging, clanging down the hallway, and just like bang, 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 and it just goes on, and they don't know what's going on, and it stops in front of the room, and it's banging and banging on the door, and it's so fucking loud. It feels like the door is gonna not come down. Apparently, the way that they filmed it was they actually had like equivalent sounds happening on set, so that the actors could actually react to the noises in time. And I think that they just like layered on that audio with like sound effects in post, so it is so fucking loud, and the banging is it feels like it's two things happening at once, like when you lay two identical sounds over each other, but they're like slightly not synchronized, right? And it's like bang, bang, it's so loud. And she like screams eventually because like the doorknob starts turning and the door isn't locked, and Eleanor's like screams at it to go away, and then it stops, and she suddenly has this like now it knows that someone's in here. Now it knows that I'm in here. And from there it's almost like the house almost torments her in particular. It's just Eleanor being bullied. Oh, Julie Harris. She's so good at playing like this pathetic little lesbian. So I don't even know how much I want to spoil about the movie. I'll talk about the direction first before I get into the plot stuff that I just love. Because I would absolutely recommend this. It's a fucking great movie. The directing is just impeccable. It is such a visually bold and dynamic movie. They had the option to film in color by 1963, actually, but the director, Robert Wise, insisted on using black and white. Same director. Oh my god, he's fucking Sound of Music and West Side Story? How did I not know that? And Star Trek the Motion Picture. So man, he directed a lot of movies. What was I talking about? Yeah, so his he insisted on writing on filming in black and white because he thought that it would make just the film more visually striking, and it absolutely does, and he uses it to such great effect. If you ever want to see an amazing use of black and white, the way that he blocks shots, the layouts that he uses, the way he frames people or objects, like there's this big like I guess I'll call it a visual landmark, which is in the library, where it happened, which is this big this metal spiral staircase with that goes really high up, and it's got the steps themselves have a bunch of holes, like perforations in them, and there's like a railing with there's a railing on the side, right? And it's this big spiral staircase that goes up to the ceiling. And there are so many shots using this staircase that are just so incredibly dynamic, of like following a character up the stairs, peering at them through the holes in the steps, and like the perspective is crazy. So many cool shots in this film. Oh my god. The use of music is great. It's just a rockin' movie. It's a great movie. I would absolutely recommend it. So that's before I get into like deep spoilers. But this movie has, I think some of the scenes in this film are so good. There's like, so there's this implication that that the house kind of like chooses a sacrifice almost. There's some kind of a presence in the house that chooses a sacrifice every 90 years. It demands it. And somehow things are set in motion so that it can have somebody to take. And so there's like this scene where they're going to they go into like this garden, and the house itself is beautiful. It's such a nice house. I believe it might have been filmed on location. I think it was. What am I trying to say? There's like this big statue. There's this big statue of the architect of the house, Crane, and then like 3 other people. And the characters are talking about who these different statues, these different figures represent. And like one of them is his first wife. One of them is the second. Oh my God, the second wife. There were 2 wives and they both died. The second one died. She falls down the stairs. And there's this great POV shot of her tumbling down the stairs. It's like a really intense POV shot for 1963. And then it comes to rest upside down, looking at like the front door. It's crazy. It's such a good shot. It's such a cool shot. And they can't figure out who the third figure is supposed to be. And they're saying that it looks like, they think it's the caretaker. And then someone mentions that it looks like Eleanor. And you kind of like, is Eleanor like the sacrifice? And then you learn that one of the things that really fucked Eleanor up is that her mother was like perpetually ill growing up. And she basically was her mother's full-time caretaker. And there was one night where her mom was having an emergency and was banging on the back on the wall behind her bed, which is Eleanor slept on the other side of the wall. And Eleanor just like, she woke up and went, it's fine. It's probably nothing, because there's so many false emergencies, and there's like and it turns into a boy who cried wolf. Turns out it was real, and her mom was dying, and Eleanor going back to sleep basically caused her mom to die. And she is like super sensitive, and she has all of these hang-ups and trauma about her mom that Theo picks up on. And it's obviously, she picks up on it just via reading her mind, ESP. So there's an obvious allegory to the caretaker who let the daughter die as an old woman, and Eleanor letting her mother die. And there's like all these like little repetitions and echoes with like the history of what's happened in the house. Eventually, Eleanor goes into this full-blown like a ChatGPT psychosis, where she completely accepts she's this character. She feels like she has nowhere else to go. And she's come to this house, and she says multiple times, I don't plan on ever leaving here. Probably just because she has nowhere else to go. And she kind of feels like she's found a place, and she's found people who kind of accept her and care about her with this research team. And for the first time, she feels like she's wanted. She says I'm going to a place where I'll be wanted. And obviously, at first, you think that that's referring to the other team members, but later it kind of gets twisted on its head, and it's referring to the house. The house is what wants her. That's where she's welcome. And she becomes obsessed with essentially like integrating into the house and becoming a part of the house. She, which eventually leads to her dying, crashing into the exact same tree that the original wife crashed and died into. So there's all these like, again, like little allegories, and it's like poetry. It rhymes. So many like fun little connections. I was reading up on I was so curious about like the lesbian thing, because that was so unusual to me for a movie from 1963. And I read this. There's not actually that much writing on the haunting and the kids are calling it sapphic undertones. But there was one blog post that I found that pointed out this really funny connection. So there's, first of all, there's Theo is definitely a lesbian, right? She is definitely homosexual. In fact, there was apparently a scene that was cut, or it was never filmed for pacing reasons, and also not wanting to be too blatant with it, trying to avoid censorship, self-censorship, I guess you can call it, where Theo is, the scene of Theo getting the letter, like the invitation to come to the house. And she's like in her apartment, and she's just had a falling out, clearly just had a falling out with her partner. And it's on, she's staring at the mirror, and like, "I hate you" has been written in lipstick on the mirror. Whoa. It's like choked on my own spit. Obviously not, probably not left there by a man. But there's, oh my god, there's even because there's a scene where she's talking with Eleanor. They're like hanging out in bed. Eleanor's like painting her toes. And she asks Theo, about where she lives in her own place, and she's like, "Well, we have an apartment." And Eleanor asks her if she's married, and Theo just stares at her for a second and goes, "No." It's like, it's so blatant. That was like really the scene where I was like, hang on, this is pretty blatant. Oh, there's such a good scene. Oh, wait, no, hang on. Let me finish this track. So there's a scene where they're eating breakfast, and they get into this conversation, and someone asks Eleanor, they ask Eleanor what her biggest fear is. And Eleanor responds that she's most afraid of like being left behind or something, or basically going unnoticed. And there's this running thing where Theo repeatedly uses her ESP to read Eleanor's mind and say things that she was thinking before Eleanor has said it. Like on their first meeting, she calls her Nell, and Eleanor is like, "How did you know that that's my nickname?" And she goes, "Well, isn't that the affectionate form of Eleanor?" Which is already like, okay, first of all, very gay. And second of all, that this is like a running thing throughout the film. So Eleanor responds that her fear is about being like left behind. And then they ask Theo what her greatest fear is. And she says, "Knowing what I really want." And then she looks at Eleanor, and there's like a reaction shot of Eleanor. And I actually didn't pick up on it on my first viewing, but I was like, oh my god, is the implication that is Eleanor's true biggest fear? She's scared of knowing that she likes the ladies. So much funny subtext. Other scenes that I loved. So at one point, because of the events that have happened, and the fact that it seems to be focusing itself on Eleanor, Markway tells both of the ladies that they need to start sleeping together in the same room. So that you literally can't escape from talking about the lesbian undertones. So they managed to subvert like the decency standards of the time by having them sleep in separate beds, but being pushed up directly next to each other. So a little more intimate than I Love Lucy, I guess. That was a thing, by the way, if you didn't know that, especially for my non-American listeners. That used to be a thing that like you could not, at least on television, the rules might have been looser for film, but you could not show two people in the same bed. Not like even just having sex or naked, or you could not show a husband and a wife like in the same bed in any circumstance. So you watch I Love Lucy and they're like sleeping in separate beds. That's why. Just fucking ridiculous. But they push them up right next to each other like it's the goddamn, like, what if I put my Minecraft bed next to yours? Unless, just kidding. Unless. And Eleanor, so like they fall asleep. Eleanor wakes up in the middle of the night and she starts looking at the wall and she's hearing voices that are like somewhere, like maybe on the other side of the wall or outside in the hallway. And it's like these three distinct voices. There's like a man's voice, there's a woman's voice, and then there's this child, like this young child crying out. And Eleanor interprets this. So first of all, she's terrified. And the pattern of the shadows on the wall. The wall has this very particular like carving to it, like this pattern carved into it. And the shadows, it makes the shadows fall in such a way that they kind of resemble a face. It's really weird. And she's staring at this wall and she's terrified, right? And she's like, Theo, hold my hand. Hold my hand, Theo. And you never see Theo actually holding her hand, so you're like, okay, oh god, what's going on? It is almost entirely just a shot of her face, like a close-up shot of her face in the dim light. And it's getting worse and louder, and there's more voices, and she suddenly begins to believe that they're hurting the child. They're hurting the baby. And she cannot stand this. It is like extremely upsetting for her. And suddenly she cries out. She goes, stop doing that. And when she does, she sits up. Or no, she screams. And then the light turns on in the room. And suddenly you pull out from the close-up shot, and you see that Eleanor, because she's talking about like, oh my god, she's holding my hand so tightly it feels like it's gonna break. You see that Eleanor is not even in the bed. She's sleeping in like a little small couch or like an ottoman. No, an ottoman's like the footstool thing. Is it? What the fuck is an ottoman? That's the footstool thing, right? Yeah, it's kind of an ottoman. She's basically sleeping on that on the other side of the room. And then it pans over to Theo, having turned on the light and like, what's going on? Why are you screaming? Why are you over there? And it's just this like, and you know what? I was expecting, honestly, like the shot was pretty surprising, but the situation is so terrifying to be like, suddenly I have changed location. And also, I think the hand-holding thing is terrifying, not just because of like, oh my god, who was holding her hand, but because it actually is the first moment where you start to call into question the little rules of the film. So there's this idea that's kind of set up, which is that the ghost needs to like, has almost a physical presence, that it actually has to like open doors and move somewhat physically through the house. Like it has a position in space. And so as long as they lock their doors, nothing can get in. At least nothing can open the door, right? Assuming that I guess it might have to unlock it or break the door down or something. But there's like this relative idea of safety. And then you get this scene and it's like, who was supposed to be holding her hand besides the ghost or the presence? And she's like, so suddenly all the rules of the film seem to have been thrown out, that you've kind of built, like that you even kind of understand what's going on, which is great thematically, because there's this thing that's set up, which is that it's an exchange between Markway and Luke, where Luke is like, It's got no rules. It's unquantifiable. You can't understand. It's not there. You can't scientifically study this as far as we know. So I don't even think it's real. And Markway is like, well, he basically likens it to any other type of science that was so beyond our understanding at one point that it would have been considered supernatural, right? And it's like, does it not have rules? Is it just made up gobbledygook? Or are the rules just so far beyond our understanding right now that we can't fathom how it actually works? And so you kind of get this idea where the movie is kind of building up these rules for how the ghost works, how the haunting works. And then you get this scene, which is not only like great and tense, and it has this amazing build-up to that moment, but it also shatters everything that you've built up so far. Where you're like, how did it get in the room? Could it have gone in the room at any point? What is it? What are the limits? And now it's just like, God, I don't know what's going on. I feel like the characters are in danger at every point in the story. It's great. I think one of my favorite scenes is the climax, or near the climax, like the third act, where Markway's wife, who thinks he's like a total loon, right? With all this stuff, she thinks he's totally silly about all the ghost things. She like surprises them to drop in. She drops in unexpected. And she's like, I'm going to prove that you're full of shit. You know what? I'm going to sleep in the nursery. And they're like, don't go in the nursery. Do not go in the... The nursery has essentially been where the daughter grew up, has basically been labeled... I think Markway even called it the cold heart of the house. Like the core of the haunting is in that nursery. There's like this cold spot right in front of the door that is this unexplainable draft. And she decides that she's going to sleep in the nursery, and he cannot convince her otherwise. So they decide to just keep watch. At one point, they basically, he and Luke are gonna trade shifts. And when they're not watching the nursery, they are going to all be down in like the what is it? It's like the study or the room. It's just some like room, kind of like a living room type area. In big houses, they just got rooms that they don't know what to do with. So like Eleanor, Theo, and Markway are all sleeping down there. Luke comes in because he wants a drink. And he grabs like a bottle of whiskey off of the fireplace. And then all of a sudden they get woken up by like a scream. And Markway's like, what the fuck? Why are you down here? Why are you down here? What's going on? Where's my wife? And Luke's like, I just came down for a drink. And then suddenly they hear the pounding again. They hear the noise. And Luke has been a skeptic the whole movie, right? He thinks it's all a bunch of hooey. The noise starts getting louder and louder and louder, and it's like coming down the stairs, down the hallway, and it gets right to the door, and they're all just petrified, like frozen or trembling, as this thing is just banging on the other side of the door. And I think it's like my favorite line in the movie. There's this incredible looking effects shot. It's so simple. It's one of the few effect shots in the whole movie where the door bulges outward, like something's pushing and contorting on it, and then like resets back to normal, and then pushes back forward, almost like it's breathing. And you get all these reaction shots of Luke's face, and he is so good. Who's the actor who plays him? It's what is his name? Russ Tamblyn. Just his expression changing as he's watching this impossible thing happen in front of his eyes. It's just like his eyes widening, and just like his nostrils just like flaring a little, and like he is having a life-changing, life-altering moment. And he drops the bottle of whiskey on the floor. And he looks at Markway and he goes, or he doesn't even like change his eyes. He just slightly tilts his head in Markway's direction and he says, Doc, you can have the house for cheap. And it's like a comedy show. It's a joke. Like, it's a comedy line, but it feels so in character for the type of person that he is that it doesn't diminish from the horror. It's just this little joke is his way of like processing and coping with his fucking life, his whole life changing. It's such a good scene, and just like the tension of what the hell is going to happen. Oh my God. This movie rules. It is so good. It's so good.